My parents demanded $50,000 and wanted me to sacrifice my career to cover up a crime my sister committed. So, I told the truth and watched everything burn. But now? They say blood is thicker than water. But what happens when family loyalty demands you betray your very soul? I learned that lesson the hard way, and it cost me almost everything I had spent my life building. For 32 years, I was Nathan Cooper, a rising star in the Boston District Attorney's office. I had it all figured out, a career I loved, a wonderful fiancée named Caroline, and what I genuinely thought was a supportive family. Then, my younger sister committed a crime so egregious. It shattered our world, and my parents demanded I sacrifice my entire future to cover it up. I chose truth over family, and in that moment, I watched my entire world burn to ashes. Growing up in Lexington, just outside Boston, our home looked picture-perfect. My dad, Richard, was a bank manager, and my mom, Martha, taught high school English. We had the quintessential colonial house with manicured lawns my mom lovingly tended. But beneath that polished surface, things were complicated. From my earliest memories, there was a clear favorite, and it was never me. Allison, my sister, was born when I was 4, and from that moment, she became the son my parents revolved around. While they covered my basic needs, every ounce of emotional investment was poured into her. Allison just needs a little extra attention, Mom would explain whenever I questioned the blatant imbalance. She's more sensitive than you are, Nathan. You're so self-sufficient. And I was self-sufficient, largely because I had no other choice. When college came, I worked multiple jobs to supplement my partial scholarship while pulling perfect grades. Allison, she dropped out of 3 different universities, each time with Mom and Dad quietly covering the wasted tuition. College isn't for everyone, Dad would shrug. Allison is just trying to find her path. By the time I graduated law school, Allison had cycled through 6 different jobs, none lasting more than 6 months. Each time she quit or got fired, my parents covered her rent. When she totaled her first car texting while driving, they bought her a new one. Credit card debt? Poof, gone. All while patting me on the back for never asking for a dime. It was maddening. Despite the obvious favoritism, I kept trying to hold our family together. I showed up for Sunday dinners. I remembered birthdays with thoughtful gifts. I genuinely believed that if I achieved enough professional success, I could finally earn their respect, their equal treatment. After passing the bar, I landed my dream job as an assistant DA. The hours were brutal, the pay wasn't lavish, but I loved it. I believed in justice, in holding people accountable. Over 5 years, I built a solid reputation, specializing in financial crimes. My personal life flourished too when I met Caroline Walsh, a pediatric nurse with a warm smile and a no-nonsense approach to life. She was my anchor. After 2 years, I proposed on Cape Cod. We set a fall wedding date and started saving for our first home. Everything felt like it was finally clicking into place. My mentor, Deputy DA James Harrington, took me under his wing. He gave me high-profile cases, and when we secured convictions, I started getting noticed. You've got the makings of an excellent prosecutor, Nathan, he told me one evening. Keep this trajectory, and you'll be sitting in my chair someday. Last spring, the whispers started about a senior prosecutor position. Harrington pulled me aside. I've recommended you, he said. The announcement is a month away, but between us, it's looking very good. Caroline was ecstatic. They should know how well you're doing, she insisted. This is a big deal. So, we invited my parents and Allison to an upscale dinner. My parents seemed genuinely pleased. Dad ordered an expensive bottle of wine. To Nathan, he said, raising his glass. We always knew you'd do well for yourself. It was one of those rare moments where I actually felt seen, valued. But it didn't last. As the evening wore on, Allison grew quiet, constantly checking her phone. When the conversation kept circling back to my career and wedding, she abruptly excused herself. Caroline followed, returning alone with a concerned expression. Is Allison okay? I asked. She seemed upset, Caroline whispered. When I asked if she was all right, she just said something about always being in your shadow. My mother overheard. She immediately jumped to Allison's defense. It's not easy being the younger sibling of someone so accomplished, she said, with a pointed look at me, as if Allison's feelings were somehow my fault. We should change the subject. Just like that, my moment was over. The rest of dinner focused on Allison's new passion for becoming a social media influencer, with my parents listening with rapt attention, despite her having no followers or experience. Driving home, Caroline squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, even if they struggle to show it properly, she said gently. Thanks. I mumbled, trying to hide my disappointment. It's fine. I'm used to it. But deep down, a part of me still hoped that success would finally earn me the unconditional love and support they had always lavished on Allison. That hope was about to be utterly, completely shattered. Just 3 weeks later, a single phone call ripped through the darkness at 2:15 a.m. Caroline stirred as I fumbled for my cell. Hello, I rasped. Nathan. Allison's voice came through in broken sobs. I need help. Please, I really messed up. I shot upright. Allison, what happened? Are you hurt? No, I'm at Mom and Dad's. You need to come over. Please, Nathan. It's really bad. Tell me what happened. I insisted already, scrambling out of bed. I can't explain on the phone. Please just come. Mom and Dad said to get you here right away. Caroline was sitting up now, concern etched across her face. What's going on? I don't know. Something with Allison. She's at my parents' house and sounds hysterical. I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt. I'm sorry, but I need to go. I'm coming with you, Caroline said, firmly, already reaching for her clothes. 20 minutes later, we pulled into my parents' driveway. All the lights were on, an eerie glow in the pre-dawn darkness. My father opened the door before we could even knock, his face ashen. Thank God you're here, he whispered, ushering us inside. The living room was a mess. My mother sat on the couch, her arm around Allison, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Tissues and half-empty mugs of tea littered the coffee table. The local news played silently on the TV. What happened? I demanded, looking between them. My mother looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. There's been an accident. Accident? Is everyone okay? My father closed the living room door, his voice dropping to a whisper. Allison was driving home from a party tonight. She had been drinking, and she hit someone. A cold dread began to form in the pit of my stomach. A pedestrian. My father continued, his voice barely audible. She panicked and drove away. The room seemed to tilt. I stared at Allison, who couldn't meet my eyes. You hit someone and left the scene? I asked her directly. She nodded, her shoulders shaking with fresh sobs. The car is in the garage, my father added. The front end is damaged. There's blood on the bumper. Caroline gasped beside me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Who did you hit? Are they alive? I demanded. My mother grabbed the remote and turned up the volume on the television. A reporter stood outside a hospital. Police are searching for the driver of a vehicle that struck 34-year-old Miguel Rodriguez as he was walking home from his late shift at Massachusetts General Hospital, the reporter said. Rodriguez, a father of 2 young children, is currently in critical condition. Witnesses report the vehicle fled the scene immediately. Oh my God, I whispered, sinking into a chair. Allison, what have you done? It was an accident, she wailed. I didn't see him until it was too late. I was scared. My prosecutor's training immediately kicked in. You need to get a lawyer right now. Leaving the scene of an accident with personal injury is a felony. The sooner you come forward, the better it will look for you. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. We've been discussing this for the past hour, my father said carefully, and we think there might be another approach. What do you mean? I asked, a sinking feeling already settling in. Nathan, you work in the district attorney's office, my mother said, as if I needed reminding. You have access to information about the investigation. I stared at them in disbelief. Are you suggesting I use my position to interfere with a hit-and-run investigation? Not interfere, my father said quickly. Just keep us informed about what the police know, whether they have any leads, if they're close to identifying Allison. Caroline placed her hand on my arm, a silent warning. I knew she was right. Even accessing case information for personal reasons was an ethics violation. I can't do that, I said firmly. It would be a conflict of interest. I need to disclose that my sister is involved. You can't do that, my mother exclaimed. It would ruin her life. She hit someone and left them, bleeding in the street. I shot back, struggling to keep my voice level. That decision may have already ruined her life and possibly ended someone else's. Allison's sobs intensified. My father pulled me into the kitchen. Nathan, be reasonable, he urged in a low voice. We don't even know if they have any leads yet. All we're asking is that you find out if Allison is already a suspect before we make any decisions. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling utterly trapped. Dad, this is exactly the kind of situation where I should recuse myself completely. This is your sister we're talking about, he hissed. Your family. Are you really going to throw her to the wolves without even knowing what evidence they have? After nearly an hour of this back and forth, exhausted and conflicted, I reluctantly agreed to discreetly check if there were any leads. Nothing more. I made it clear this would be a one-time exception, solely to understand the situation before they retained proper legal counsel. As dawn broke, Caroline and I finally left. She had been mostly silent, but once we were in the car, she turned to me. Nathan, you know you can't get involved in this, she said quietly. Your entire career would be at risk. I know, I sighed. I just need to find out how strong the case is against her. Then I'll convince them she needs to come forward voluntarily with a lawyer. Caroline didn't seem convinced. Just be careful, she said, squeezing my hand supportively. This feels like it could spiral quickly. She had no idea how right she was. The next day at work, fighting exhaustion, I cautiously inquired about recent hit-and-run cases. My colleague in the traffic division mentioned the Rodriguez case. Nasty business, he said. Guy's fighting for his life. 2 kids might lose their father. We've got a witness who caught a partial plate, though. Should have the bastard soon enough. My blood ran cold. Hey, partial plate? He nodded. First 3 digits match about 200 vehicles in the greater Boston area. They're working through the list now, focusing on cars with front-end damage. Allison's license plate would be on that list. It was only a matter of time. 2 days later, my parents called an emergency family meeting. Caroline offered to come, but I insisted she stay home. I didn't want to drag her deeper into this. When I arrived, the tension was palpable. My father paced. My mother sat rigidly. Allison looked pale, but strangely calm, a stark contrast to her hysterics the other night. The police came by the body shop where I take my car, my father said without preamble. They're checking all repair shops for recently damaged vehicles matching the description. I told you they would, I replied. This is a serious investigation. The victim is a hospital employee with a family. There's media coverage. They're going to be thorough. What else do you know? My mother demanded. I hesitated, then shared what I'd learned. They have paint samples from the scene that narrow down the color and make of the car. And they have a partial plate number that matches Allison's. Allison started to cry again, but it seemed more controlled this time, almost performative. My father stopped pacing and sat down heavily. We need $50,000, he announced. Excuse me. For Gerald Hoffman, my father clarified. He's the best criminal defense attorney in Massachusetts. He handles high-profile cases like this and gets results. $50,000 is just the retainer, my mother added. You're the only one in the family who has that kind of money saved. I stared at them, utterly incredulous. You expect me to pay $50,000 for Allison's defense, money that Caroline and I have been saving for our future. This is an emergency, Nathan, my mother snapped. After all we sacrificed for your education, all those years of supporting you through law school, supporting me? I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. I worked 3 jobs and took out student loans. You didn't pay a dime for my law degree. We gave you a stable home, my father countered. We raised you with advantages Allison never had. I shook my head, reeling at the blatant rewriting of history. What advantages? She got new cars and paid tuition, while I worked for everything I have. Blood is thicker than water, Nathan, my father said. Ominously, family stands together in times of crisis. The conversation grew more intense as they outlined additional expectations. Not only did they want me to drain my savings, but they also expected me to use my position to gain access to evidence. You could find out exactly what they have, my mother suggested. Maybe some evidence could get lost along the way. Are you actually asking me to tamper with evidence? I was aghast. That's a felony. I would lose my law license, go to prison, destroy my entire life. Your sister's life is at stake, my father countered. Because of her choices. I snapped. She chose to drink and drive. She chose to flee the scene instead of calling for help. Allison finally spoke up, her voice small, but with an undercurrent of entitlement I'd heard countless times before. It was an accident, Nathan. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Why are you being so cruel? I left that meeting with a pounding headache and a growing sense of dread. The expectations were not only unreasonable, but potentially criminal. Yet, the guilt trips and emotional manipulation were taking their toll. Over the next few days, I struggled to focus at work. Cases piled up. I missed a filing deadline and received a concerned email from Harrington. The promotion, all but promised, now felt like it was slipping away. Caroline noticed. One night, after I snapped at her over something trivial, she confronted me. You've been distant ever since Allison's accident, she said. You barely sleep. You're irritable, and you won't talk to me about what's happening. We're supposed to be partners. Nathan, I'm handling it, I insisted. Are you? She shot back. Because it seems like it's handling you. We had our first serious argument that night. I couldn't tell her the full extent of what my family was asking of me without potentially making her an accessory. The legal implications created a wall between us, just when I needed her support most. Meanwhile, Miguel Rodriguez's condition worsened. He was placed in a medically induced coma due to brain swelling. Local news covered candlelight vigils held by his co-workers. His wife, Elena, made tearful pleas for the driver to come forward. The hit and run became the major story in Boston. The public was outraged. My anxiety reached new heights when my supervisor assigned me to collaborate with the traffic division on a different case. I would be working alongside the very detectives investigating my sister's crime. That evening, my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment. Fortunately, Caroline was on a night shift. We figured it out, my father said excitedly as I reluctantly let them in. We have proof. Allison wasn't driving. What are you talking about? My mother pulled out a folder. We found these photos on Facebook. Allison's ex-boyfriend Ryan was at the same party that night. He drives a similar car. We can say he borrowed Allison's car and was the one driving. I flipped through the printouts, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. You want to frame an innocent person for a crime Allison committed. Ryan has a previous DUI, my father pointed out, as if this justified the plan. The police will believe he was the driver. All you need to do is make sure this information gets to the right detective. I closed the folder and handed it back. This is a new low, even for you two. I won't be part of framing an innocent man. Then the $50,000, my mother pressed. We need it by Monday. The lawyer won't wait. I showed them to the door. I need time to think. But I already knew what I had to do. I just wasn't ready to accept the consequences. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in my career. Instead of going to the office, I drove to Massachusetts General Hospital. I told myself I just wanted to understand more about Miguel Rodriguez. But deep down, I knew I was seeking moral clarity. I sat in the hospital cafeteria for an hour, watching staff come and go. Eventually, I made my way to the ICU waiting area. A small group huddled in one corner. A woman in her early 30s sat slightly apart, staring blankly at a children's book. From news reports, I recognized her as Elena Rodriguez, Miguel's wife. Two young children, a boy about 7 and a girl perhaps 4, colored quietly on the floor nearby. The little girl would occasionally look up at her mother with confusion and concern beyond her years. A doctor emerged from the ICU and approached Elena. I couldn't hear their conversation, but her body language told me everything. No improvement. Maybe worse news. She nodded stoically until the doctor left, then covered her face with her hands. The little boy noticed and went to his mother, putting his small arms around her shoulders. The sight broke something inside me. These children might grow up without their father because my sister couldn't be bothered to call an ambulance after hitting him. I left the hospital with renewed determination. That evening, I drove to Allison's apartment. No parents, just her and me. You need to tell me exactly what happened that night, I said after. She reluctantly let me in. The complete truth. I already told you, she said defensively. It was an accident. Were you texting? I asked point blank. In addition to driving drunk. Her eyes widened slightly before she looked away. Maybe. I don't remember exactly. So I summarized bluntly. You were drunk texting while driving, hit a man, and left him to die in the street. And now our parents want me to destroy my career and possibly go to prison to protect you. They're just trying to help, she said weakly. No, I countered. They're enabling you, just like they always have. But this isn't about maxing out a credit card or dropping out of college. A man might die, Allison. His children might grow up without a father. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine remorse cross her face. But it quickly hardened into something more familiar, self-preservation. What do you want me to do, Nathan? Turn myself in? Go to prison? My life would be over. Miguel Rodriguez's life might be over. I countered. Actions have consequences. It's time you finally face some. Later that week, my parents escalated their pressure campaign. The $50,000 demand became immediate. He can make this go away, my father insisted. But he needs the full retainer by tomorrow. I don't have liquid cash like that. I explained. It's in retirement accounts, our house down payment fund. I can't just withdraw it without penalties. Figure it out, my mother snapped. This is your sister's future we're talking about. The conversation grew more disturbing as they outlined additional strategies, including having me plant evidence implicating someone else. I left their house feeling physically ill. At work, Harrington called me into his office. Whatever's going on with you, Nathan, it's affecting your work, he said with genuine concern. If you need help, personal or professional, my door is always open. I nearly broke down and told him everything. Instead, I mumbled something about wedding stress and promised to refocus. That night, I thought about Professor Eleanor Winters from my law school ethics class. Moral courage isn't about the easy calls, she used to say. It's about doing the right thing when every fiber of your being screams for the easy way out. When I returned to my apartment, I found Caroline sitting at the kitchen table. My hastily scribbled notes about the Rodriguez case were spread out before her. What is this? She asked. Her voice steady, but her eyes betrayed hurt and confusion. Why do you have notes about the hit-and-run case that's all over the news? I couldn't lie to her anymore. I told her everything, what my sister had done and what my parents were asking of me. They want you to pay $50,000 and compromise evidence, she asked. Incredulously. That's insane, Nathan. You'd be throwing away everything you've worked for. They're my family, I said weakly. And what am I? Caroline demanded, tears filling her eyes. What about our future together? The home we've been saving for? The life we're building? I don't know what to do. I admitted, my voice breaking. Yes, you do, she said firmly. You just don't want to do it because it's hard. Our argument escalated. Caroline eventually grabbed her coat and stormed out. Figure out what kind of man you really are, Nathan, she said from the doorway. Because right now, I don't recognize you. The following day, searching for perspective, I drove to my childhood home while my parents were at work. I used the spare key they kept under a flower pot and wandered through the house, looking at old photographs. In my old bedroom, now converted to an office, I found a box of childhood mementos. Among them was an essay I'd written in 8th grade about wanting to become a prosecutor. I want to make sure people who break the law face consequences, my 13-year-old self had written. I believe in justice and fairness for everyone. When had I lost sight of that clarity? When had I started considering compromising everything I believed in? I made one final attempt to understand the full impact of Allison's actions by scheduling a meeting with Miguel's doctor, introducing myself only as an attorney interested in the case. He explained the extent of the injuries, multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury. Even if Miguel survived, he might never walk again. He would likely suffer cognitive impairments. His life as he knew it was over. That evening, my parents invited me to dinner, promising a reasonable discussion. When I arrived, I found Allison there too. My father poured wine as if we were celebrating. We've spoken with the attorney again, my father began. He suggested that given your position, you might be able to influence which evidence gets priority in the investigation. What does that Mean? I asked, though I already knew. The paint samples from the scene, my mother explained, calmly, as if discussing a minor traffic ticket. If they were to go missing from the evidence room, the case against Allison would be much weaker. You're asking me to steal evidence, I said flatly. We're asking you to help your sister, my father corrected. Like we've always helped you. Something snapped inside me. Years of resentment, coupled with the moral weight of the current situation, came pouring out. When have you ever helped me? I demanded, my voice rising. You've spent my entire life favoring Allison, making excuses for her, cleaning up her messes. You never held her accountable for anything, and look where that's gotten her. She nearly killed a man and left him to die in the street, and your solution is to commit *more crimes to cover it up? Nathan, my mother warned, glancing nervously at the open windows. No, I'm done. I continued, standing up from the table. This ends now. I won't destroy my life, my career, and my relationship with Caroline to protect Allison from the consequences of her actions. Not this time. If you walk out that door, my father said coldly, you're choosing strangers over your own blood. I looked at each of them, these people who shared my DNA but suddenly felt like strangers themselves. I'm choosing justice, I replied. I'm choosing the truth. I'm choosing to be someone who can look at himself in the mirror. Maybe it's time you all tried doing the same. I walked out, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. I spent that night in my office, staring at the Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct, framed on my wall. As an officer of the court, I had an ethical obligation to report knowledge of a crime. As a prosecutor, I had sworn to uphold justice. As a son and brother, I felt pulled in the opposite direction. Around midnight, I called Caroline. I know what I have to do, I told her when she answered. I should have done it from the beginning. Are you sure? She asked her, voice gentle despite our recent argument. If I compromise on this, I wouldn't be the man you agreed to marry, I said. I wouldn't be the man I want to be. Whatever happens, she promised, we'll face it together. The next morning, I requested one final meeting with my parents and Allison. We gathered in their living room. The tension was palpable. I've made my decision, I announced. I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Allison needs to retain an attorney and voluntarily come forward today. I'll do everything I legally can to help her navigate the process, but I won't cross ethical lines. We've been through this, my father dismissed. That's not an option. Then you leave me no choice, I said quietly. If Allison doesn't turn herself in by 5 o'clock today, I will report what I know to the proper authorities. The room exploded in outrage. My mother began crying. My father turned red with anger. Allison stared at me with naked hatred. We already took care of it, my mother said between sobs. We told the police Allison was home with us all night. We gave her an alibi. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this new information. You've just admitted to lying to the police in an ongoing investigation. That's another crime. You would really betray your own family? My father demanded. You're asking me to betray everything else I believe in, I replied. My answer is no. I left them with the deadline and drove straight to my office. My first step was to formally recuse myself from any involvement with the case. I scheduled an immediate meeting with my direct supervisor. I need to disclose a conflict of interest. I began once we were behind closed doors. The hit-and-run case involving Miguel Rodriguez. I have reason to believe my sister was the driver. His expression shifted from confusion to shock. Nathan, are you certain about this? Yes, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I've been struggling with this information for days, which explains my recent performance issues. I should have come forward immediately, and I accept any consequences for that delay. After a lengthy discussion about my ethical obligations, I was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. I then met with the detectives handling the case and provided a formal statement detailing Allison's confession and the evidence I was aware of. That evening, I watched from my apartment window as 2 police cruisers pulled up outside my parents' house. Caroline held my hand as I made the hardest phone call of my life. Dad, I said. When he answered, the police are here. I've given them a statement. They're coming to arrest Allison. You're no longer our son, he replied before hanging up. The media explosion was immediate and brutal. Prosecutor turns in own sister for hit, and run, screamed the headlines. My phone rang constantly. Caroline fielded most of them, shielding me. Boston legal community rocked by Cooper family drama. Read one sensational article. Local news vans parked outside my apartment. My parents' home received similar treatment. The DA's office released a terse statement. Assistant District Attorney Nathan Cooper has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review of potential conflicts of interest. The office has no further comment. Caroline faced criticism from her own family. How could you support him turning in his own sister? Her mother demanded during a tense phone call I overheard. Because it was the right thing to do, Caroline replied firmly. And because the man I'm marrying believes in justice. Even when it's difficult. Her unwavering support was my lifeline during those dark days. Allison's first court appearance was surreal. I sat on the opposite side of the courtroom from my parents, who refused to acknowledge my presence. Allison, dressed conservatively and looking appropriately somber, pleaded not guilty. Her attorney suggested to the press that I had fabricated evidence out of long-standing sibling rivalry. The Commonwealth's case relies heavily on testimony from the defendant's estranged brother, who has his own motivations that will be explored at trial, he told reporters. The character assassination continued in the press and on social media. Anonymous accounts posted threats. Old classmates shared perceived slights, painting me as jealous and vindictive. A few colleagues quietly reached out, offering support. James Harrington sent a brief text. Integrity costs something. That's what makes it valuable. Hang in there. Caroline eventually had to leave town temporarily to escape the media circus affecting her work. The night after she left, I sat alone in our apartment, questioning everything. Had I made the right choice? Was the professional and personal cost worth it? I had done what I believed was right, but I'd lost my family, possibly my career, and my reputation was in tatters. The weight of it all felt crushing. The ethics investigation at the DA's office was thorough and uncomfortable. I sat through hours of questioning about when I learned of Allison's involvement, why I waited, and what actions I had taken. Did you access any case files related to the Rodriguez investigation before recusing yourself? The internal affairs investigator asked. I made general inquiries about hit-and-run investigations, I admitted. I did not access specific case files or evidence. Did you share information about the investigation with your sister or parents? I told them what I learned through those general inquiries. Yes, I acknowledged that was inappropriate. Similar questioning awaited me at the Massachusetts Bar Association, where my law license hung in the balance. The media coverage continued unabated, with commentators taking sides. Some portrayed me as a hero prosecutor. Others painted me as a cold, calculating betrayer. The promotion I had been promised evaporated. My career trajectory was fundamentally altered. Meanwhile, Miguel Rodriguez awakened from his coma. Though I couldn't visit him, I arranged an anonymous donation to help his family with medical expenses. His prognosis remained guarded. Permanent mobility issues, likely cognitive impairments, months of rehabilitation ahead. My parents released a public statement through their attorney. We are devastated by our son Nathan's actions, which we believe stem from long-standing personal issues. We stand firmly with our daughter Allison. The extended family fractured. Caroline returned after 2 weeks away, her determination to stand by me unwavering. We postponed our wedding indefinitely, she told me. The celebration isn't appropriate right now. We'll get married when this is behind us. The timing doesn't matter. What we have does. Financial strain became another pressure point. Legal costs mounted, and our down payment fund dwindled. Information about my prior knowledge of Allison's involvement leaked to the press, causing renewed scrutiny. I suspected my parents or their attorney, though I couldn't prove it. The internal investigation at the DA's office concluded with a formal reprimand for my delayed reporting and conflict of interest, but allowed me to return to work. The Bar Association similarly issued a reprimand, but did not suspend my license. Returning to the office was an exercise in discomfort. Colleagues who had once been friendly now maintained a professional distance. I was assigned to minor cases, far from the high-profile work I had handled before. 3 months after her arrest, Allison requested to meet with me privately at the jail. Against the advice of several colleagues, I agreed. The woman who sat across from me in the visitation room looked different. The entitled attitude had been replaced by something more subdued, reflective. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I admitted. After an awkward silence, she continued. "I've had a lot of time to think and hear about what I did, about how many lives I destroyed that night, including Miguel Rodriguez's," I said pointedly. "Yes," she acknowledged, looking down at her hands, "especially his. I keep seeing his face in my dreams." The moment of impact, the look of surprise before she trailed off, unable to continue. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked. "To tell you I understand why you did what you did," she replied. "I was wrong. Mom and Dad were wrong. What I did was terrible, and I deserve to be held accountable." Her words seemed genuine, but I had been fooled by Allison's performances before. "What changed?" I asked skeptically. "There's a woman in here," Allison explained, "who killed someone while driving drunk. She's been in prison for 7 years. She talks about living with that guilt every day, about how running away just made everything worse." She wiped at her eyes. I could have been her. I almost was. Our conversation continued for nearly an hour. By the end, I sensed a genuine transformation beginning in my sister. Whether it would last remained to be seen, but it gave me the first glimmer of hope that something positive might eventually emerge from this tragedy. Later that week, I learned my parents had put their house on the market. The legal fees for Allison's defense had depleted their savings, and they were downsizing to a condominium. As I worked to rebuild my professional reputation, I found unexpected mentorship from Judge Sandra Montgomery, who had faced a similar ethical dilemma early in her career. "The legal community has a long memory," she advised me over coffee, "but it also respects moral courage. Give it time. Keep doing good work. This will eventually be a chapter in your story, not the whole book." The first holiday season, completely estranged from my family, was more difficult than I had anticipated. Caroline and I accepted an invitation from her brother. I felt like an outsider, despite their efforts to include me. "Do you regret it?" Caroline asked me late that night as we lay in bed, after telling her the truth. I considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain it's caused. I regret that it came to this point. But no, I don't regret choosing truth over deception. I couldn't have lived with myself otherwise." In January, nearly 6 months after the accident, Miguel Rodriguez's family learned of my identity and role in the case. Elena Rodriguez requested to meet with me through the victim advocate. With some trepidation, I agreed. Our meeting took place in a small conference room at the DA's office. Elena brought photographs of Miguel's ongoing rehabilitation efforts. "The doctors say he may walk again with assistance," she told me, her accent thick but her English clear. "His memory is still problematic, but he knows his children. He smiles when they visit." "I'm so sorry for what my sister did," I said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. Elena studied me carefully. "Many families protect their own, even when they do terrible things. You chose differently." She reached across the table and briefly touched my hand. "Miguel and we are trying to forgive. It is not easy, but your truth helped us begin that journey." As she left, she turned back. "Your family may not understand now, but someday they might see that your courage was also a kind of love." 1 year after I made the decision to report my sister, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. Professionally, I had gradually rebuilt my reputation. While I would likely never regain the trajectory I once had, I had found a new path that aligned more authentically with my values. Allison ultimately accepted a plea deal, receiving a 5-year prison sentence with eligibility for parole after 3 years. During her sentencing hearing, she made a full statement accepting responsibility. "What I did was inexcusable," she told the court, her voice steady despite her tears. "I made a series of terrible choices that night, and then I tried to escape the consequences instead of accepting responsibility. Mr. Rodriguez and his family have suffered immensely because of me, and no sentence can undo that harm. I am truly sorry, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends." I sat in the back of the courtroom, apart from my parents. While they still hadn't fully reconciled, small cracks had begun to appear in their united front of anger. The most significant development came through a restorative justice program. A meeting was arranged between Allison and Miguel Rodriguez. Though I wasn't present, Allison later described it as the most difficult and transformative experience of her life. He forgave me, Nathan, she said during one of my monthly visits to the prison. After everything I did to him, after changing his life forever, he looked me in the eye and said he forgives me. I don't deserve that kind of grace. Maybe that's the point of grace, I suggested. It's not about deserving it. My parents' journey toward acceptance was slower and more complicated. My mother was the first to reach out with a tentative phone call 6 months after Allison's sentencing. I still don't fully understand why you couldn't have helped us find another way, she said. But I've been seeing a therapist who's helping me recognize some patterns in how we've treated you and Allison over the years. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Our conversations remained awkward and brief, but the complete silence had broken. Caroline and I finally had our wedding the following fall. It was a smaller, more intimate gathering than we had originally planned, but in many ways, far more meaningful. Judge Montgomery officiated. My mother attended alone. My father had declined. She sat in the back row, but joined us briefly at the reception, making a stilted but sincere effort to connect with Caroline's family. Professionally, I made a significant change, reducing my hours at the DA's office to accept an adjunct position teaching legal ethics at Boston University Law School. Sharing the lessons of my experience with the next generation of attorneys gave purpose to the painful journey I had endured. Ethical dilemmas rarely announce themselves with clarity, I told my students during our first class. They creep in disguised as family loyalty, practical necessity, or the path of least resistance. Your integrity is tested not when the choice is clear, but when it tears you apart. My father finally reached out nearly 18 months after Allison's sentencing. He asked to meet me for coffee at a neutral location. I'm not ready to say you were right, he said after we'd sat in uncomfortable silence. But I've been visiting Allison regularly, and she's different. More mature, more accountable. She says that wouldn't have happened if she'd gotten away with it. It was the closest thing to an olive branch I could expect, and I accepted it. Miguel Rodriguez's recovery progressed slowly but steadily. He would never return to his previous job, but he had regained limited mobility and was able to participate in family life. Again, through the victim advocate, I occasionally received updates. Caroline and I continued to make anonymous contributions to the trust fund established for his children's education. Perhaps most surprisingly, Allison and I rebuilt our relationship on entirely new terms. During her incarceration, our monthly visits became opportunities for genuine connection rather than the performance of family harmony we had maintained for so many years. I used to think you were the lucky one, she told me during one visit. Now I realize you just made better choices. Over and over again, even when it was hard. She used her time in prison productively, earning a degree and volunteering for every rehabilitation opportunity. Her letters showed genuine growth and an emerging sense of purpose. When I get out, I want to speak to high school students about drunk driving, she wrote, about taking responsibility for your actions, about how one bad decision can change so many lives. My parents also slowly evolved, attending therapy to address their enabling patterns. My father admitted during one difficult family session that he had always favored Allison because she reminded him of himself at the same age. I saw my own weaknesses in her, he confessed. I thought I was protecting her, but I was just making sure she never had to grow up. Nearly 2 years after that fateful night, Caroline and I welcomed our first child, a daughter we named Eleanor, after my law school ethics professor. As I held my newborn, I made a silent promise to parent differently than I had been parented, to teach accountability alongside love, to value integrity over comfort. The legal community gradually came to recognize my actions as a difficult ethical stand rather than a betrayal. An article in the Massachusetts Bar Journal discussed the case as an example of moral courage, helping to restore my professional reputation. On the 3rd anniversary of the accident, we had the first complete family dinner since everything had fallen apart. Allison had been released on parole 2 months earlier and was living in a halfway house, working as an administrative assistant at a substance abuse treatment center. The conversation was tentative at first, but gradually, moments of genuine connection emerged. My father asked thoughtful questions about my teaching. My mother cooed over photos of Eleanor. Allison shared her experiences speaking to student groups about drunk driving. Nothing would ever erase the trauma and division we had experienced. Miguel Rodriguez would never fully recover. My relationship with my parents would always carry scars. But something new, potentially stronger, was slowly taking the place of what had been lost. A family built on truth rather than denial, on accountability rather than enablement. As we finished dinner, Allison raised her glass of water in a toast to difficult truths, she said quietly, and the courage to face them. Later that night, as Caroline and I drove home, she asked me a question I had considered many times. If you could go back to that first night, would you do anything differently? I thought about it carefully. I would have reported what I knew immediately, without the delay. The longer I waited, the harder it became and the more damage was done. But you wouldn't change your ultimate decision. No, I said with certainty. Some principles aren't negotiable, even for family, especially for family. Sometimes the truest form of love is holding people accountable for their actions. The journey had cost me dearly, but it had also given me something precious, the knowledge that when tested, my integrity had remained intact. That knowledge would be the foundation upon which I would build the rest of my life, and the most important legacy I could leave my daughter.